Hey, this is DJ Jazzy Jeff, and you know I got soul.
Thanks for taking the time for this interview. It's an honor to, talk to you, and congrats on this new album, Chasing Goosebumps. We had a chance to listen. It's awesome.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Definitely.
Yeah, we're just really impressed what you were able to do in, the 7 days, combining all these artists together, bringing so much talent in one space. Can you just kind of talk about, I guess, first off, how you conceptualize this whole thing? Because, we've spoken to Eric Roberson before. He's kind of told us you've done this in the past, but where'd you get this idea?
Well, I have a creative retreat that I hold at my house every year called The Playlist. And the very first year that we did it, we issued everybody a creative challenge. And we basically, put people into groups and offered them, issued them the challenge that you had to collaborate and come up with some music in 24 hours. Because what I realized is today's generation of music makers have their head in their laptop. It's not a collaboration anymore. It's just your idea. And I think, you miss the way something sounds when it's more than one person's idea. So we did it the first year, and it went over incredibly well. The songs were amazing in 24 hours. And then we did it the second year, and it was even better because we added the singer-songwriter element in it. And that's when the wheels really started turning, just at, what these groups of people came up with in 24 hours, that it was kind of like, well, what if we sat down and said, let's make a proper project in 7 days? I know musically 7 days is something that we can do, It was more so from the writing side, and then, just the finishing, where we're going to be able to do it.
Right.
But, it was just one of those things, like, let's issue the challenge, and you get creative people in the room, and, everybody kind of really, really bought in, and we had a blast doing it.
And one thing that really excited us was you had Glenn Lewis singing on all these songs. We're huge supporters of Glenn, love his voice, one of the best of his generation. How did it, we saw you had other singers there as well, but what made him the one to be the vessel to, sing all these songs that were created?
Well, you know what? It was almost kind of like how India Davenport was the lead singer of the Brand New Heavies. This wasn't a Glenn album as much as it was a playlist album.
Right.
That we just wanted Glenn to be the main vessel. And it had, the fact that people really love Glenn and you haven't really heard a lot from Glenn was a big reason. And then it was very good because it was kind of like we didn't push Glenn with the task of having to write everything. You brought in multiple writers. We kind of treated it like Motown, that Glenn didn't sing, all of his backgrounds. We had with all of the singer-songwriters, everyone could sing, so we added different textures to the background. And it actually helped the pace of what we were doing because if, you're trying to do something in 7 days, it was kind of like, listen, I can't burn Glenn out. I can't expect Glenn to sing 12 songs and sing all his backgrounds. And, it was just being smart and not only the time approach, but the creative approach.
Right. Reading the press release, it mentions your goal was to promote authenticity in music and show that meaningful music is not a lost art. Did you and the other, collaborators you had there feel like that was something you guys were missing in music in this current time?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know anybody who thinks otherwise.
Right.
I often tell the story, maybe like 2 years ago, it was a nice, beautiful summer day, and I jumped in my car, and I wanted to go for a ride. And I turned the radio on, and Earth, Wind & Fire's After the Love Is Gone was on. And I found myself driving and singing, and right in the middle of the song, I stopped, and my eyes filled up with water because I was like, who's our Earth, Wind & Fire?
Wow.
Not, we don't have an Earth, Wind & Fire. Like, you can't tell me that this type of music and music that made me feel the way this song does is gone forever. Right. You look at technology. We have the technology. We have the instruments. I'm pretty sure we still have the musicians. So what is stopping this music from coming out? And then you start paying attention to the outlets that, unfortunately, there are a lot of record companies that aren't looking for stuff like this. I want something that's going to stick to the wall, somebody's going to pay for it, and they're going to buy, that it's not necessarily something that, you know what I mean? It's almost, when you have everybody giving you fast food, you start accepting that instead of accepting a great meal. Right. And basically it was kind of like, I am never the one to tell you that something shouldn't be out there. So I don't criticize the music that's out there now. I criticize what's not out there.
Great points. Just talk about your role in this whole 1 week retreat a little bit. I mean, organically bringing all these musicians, artists, singers, songwriters together and having them work together. What was your role in the overall big picture of steering the thing, keeping everyone on track, pushing them in the right direction?
Well, I mean, that was it. Once we kind of came up, I wanted to give everybody the creative freedom to, just throw whatever we needed in the pot. And it was just kind of making sure that we picked the right songs. I mean, the stuff that we left off of the project is equally as amazing, but picking the right songs. And I kept joking that my whole job, for the week was basically herding cattle. Like, I got to make sure that when, everybody moves together, but when someone gets a little bit too far out, you got to bring them back in. And then it really started to get a little bit more intense as we got to, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because we needed to be finished by Monday. So it got to a point that, basically Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we were up, around the clock, just finishing up everything to just, to meet our deadline. So, it's I have always been, the person that I don't understand when you pick someone for what they do, not giving them the freedom for them doing it. You get artists that, would get signed by record companies, oh my God, I love your voice and I love your writing and I love your song, and then I'm going to throw you in the studio with someone that's going to change your writing, change your voice, and change your songs. And it's kind of like, well, what did what was the reason that you signed them for if you want to basically replace everything that they do? So the people that were chosen for a reason, because I am fans of, what all of these people do, and I'm very, very good at understanding that Eric Robeson and a Daniel Crawford together is an incredible mix. So it's my job to put Eric and Daniel together to let that mix happen.
That's awesome. Many know you from your legendary success in hip-hop through the years, but where did you originally develop your love of R&B and soul music?
Well, you got to understand that I came up with R&B and soul before hip-hop came out. So, I having older brothers and sisters, I grew up with everything in my house. My dad was a former MC of Count Basie. My dad passed away when I was 10. But, I grew up with Wes Montgomery and Jimmy Smith and, and the jazz 78s in my house. And then, my older brothers, one of my older brothers was in the Parliament Funkadelic and Mahavishnu Orchestra and Chick Corea and Stanley Clarke. And then my oldest brother played the bass for the Intruders. So it was, being the youngest, it was the best of everything because I soaked up a bit of music from everyone in my family, from my dad to my older brothers. And then, lo and behold, I'm in junior high school, and then hip-hop comes out. So not only did I have their music, but now I was born, with my music. Now I got my own. And I just fused it all together. Right.
Awesome. I have to tell you, we've always been in awe of what you were able to accomplish at A Touch of Jazz with your studio, and it almost seemed like the retreat was a bit of a reunion a little bit for that. Mm-hmm. You just talk about the origins of the studio and originally what you had hoped to accomplish with it.
Well, what's funny, and I had almost all of the Touch of Jazz guys, in on this project, and we all talked about what if what we did before was only a catalyst to get us to this moment now. What if everything that we went through? What I realized is that one of the main things, I have always been a humongous advocate. When things don't make sense to me, it bothers me. And it was just certain things about the music industry that just did not make sense. And I systematically started to try to break a lot of that stuff down. I didn't, like I said, about, oh, my God, we love you. You're great. You're incredible. We want to sign you. And then you get signed, and it's kind of like, nope, we don't want you to do your music anymore. We don't want you to write your music anymore. We're going to get someone to do all of that for you. And it's kind of like, so what did you sign me for? It's a little bit different because, you weren't used to being looked at as solely a vessel, because what you offered somebody was your creativity. So the first thing that I really tried to break down was the creative freedom, which, let me save my money up and let me get, a building and let me put a studio in it that we can go in and just basically make music without someone telling us what we should make. And I mean, hammering at a touch of jazz to try to get that, and then break through with the Musiq Soulchild, the Jill Scott, the Floetry was extremely satisfying because it made me feel like the music that we were doing without someone telling us, people really liked. So it made me feel like I was on the right path. But the side that we couldn't crack through is we still weren't able to put out our own music. We were able to develop it, but I still had to take it to somebody for someone to say yes or no. And that was another thing that bothered me because I don't think that anyone should be the gatekeeper of the world hearing your music. I don't think that there's anybody on this earth that has that much musical knowledge to tell you that someone should not hear something. So that's why I really started to embrace the internet, because what it allows is it allows you to cut through all of the middlemen and go directly to your fan base. You put it out. If your fans like it, they'll let you know. If your fans don't like it, they'll let you know that also. But it's not one person telling you, that it should be heard or it shouldn't. And it really wasn't until recently, with us not only, breaking through the creative barrier, but now we can put our music out. We were able to kind of release this project through STEM, which not only, gets it on all of the major platforms, but, once you turn in all of the splits of what everyone did on a project, they make sure that whatever is received financially goes into everyone's bank account.
Right.
And that was the other thing that was missing in music was the transparency. The biggest two issues I've always felt was, creative freedom and will you get paid for what you did. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until, maybe 2 years ago that I felt like, wow, you have an answer for this, that you can just put out music, for the people who like what you do, and you can get compensated for it.
Right. With all these artists that came through there, and in the early 2000s, many of them are still some of R&B and soul music's biggest stars now. Was it ever an option for you to possibly start your own label with some of these artists and put them out yourself? Well,
you know what? Once again, like I said, I don't like the concept of necessarily labels. I love the ability to help someone get their music out. But I don't think I ever really wanted the pressure of being responsible, or being solely responsible, because that's the way that people kind of looked at labels. A big part of the playlist and what I try to do is I try to empower the artist to be their own label and give them the tools that they can function on their own, and I can help you. I would love to become partners with somebody on a project, but you don't want someone to feel like they are tied down, or anything. I tell people, at the retreat, no one is hiding behind a tree with a contract trying to sign everybody. My goal is to show you all of the tools like a STEM and a sound exchange, and that can help the independent artist. That you be your own label. You make sure that you get your publishing straight. You make sure that when you have a song that people like, that you can handle the licensing and not necessarily go through somebody else, Right. And I think just me being, I had the blessing of sitting in the seat as an artist, a producer, a production company owner, and a label owner, and realized that because it was all in the same industry, every aspect that I sat in was flawed.
Right. So, and then just final question for you, just thinking of some of these names who came through your studios and who are big stars now, like you mentioned, you got your Jill Scott, Musiq Soulchild, Eric Roberson, Raheem DeVaughn, Floetry. Do you have any favorite memories thinking back to those early days of these artists? We hear these stories now, but is there anything that stands out to you, some favorite memories from working with all these artists? I
mean, all of them had, I think when you don't realize what you're creating when you're creating it. So I think one of the best things was, those first 8-9 songs that we recorded with Jill. She wasn't signed to a label. Someone didn't tell me to do it. It was Jill was dope. Come on in the studio and let's do these songs. And what I did that was different than what most people used to do back in the day was I bought a CD burner and I pressed up maybe 150, 200 copies of the first 9 songs, and I basically gave it to everybody who I felt loved music. And that's what got the word out. It wasn't holding it. It wasn't necessarily trying, who can I get to sign this? It was kind of like, hey, if you like, check this out. Hey, check this out. I had a friend over at Sony Music who, he was telling me that everybody in Sony was playing Jill's demo because they thought she was signed to Sony. Wow. And I think that, to me, that was a very great memory because it, that started the whole concept of, music is supposed to be shared. Music is supposed to be passed around to people. Everybody, I hate that, we have so many favorite artists that I feel like it's not like it's not like they lost their talent. There's a reason why we haven't gotten a Rakim album, and it's not because Rakim can't rap anymore, and I just want to get through all of that and get back to, I want to hear, some music from some of the people that I've been fans of.
Right. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So that's all we have for you. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Oh, man, I'm just absolutely ecstatic, to put out something, that was solely done for the creative process and to realize that, people really, really, people like it. We're in utter shock because, as much as we appreciate it, that really wasn't the motivation behind it. It was just kind of like, I want to hear some stuff that brings back the nostalgia and gives me goosebumps. And and Eric Roberson was the first to say goosebumps are transferable. 9 times out of 10, if it gives you goosebumps, it's going to give somebody else. So, it's working.
Right. And once again, awesome work on this project. Thank you so much for putting something like this together. R&B fans, especially our readers, are looking for stuff like this. So glad someone took the lead on a project like this.
And I absolutely appreciate the support, man. Definitely.